My brothers and sisters in Christ, in this Sunday's Gospel, Jesus heals a deaf man. A brief meditation on what this means for us today. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Again, Jesus left the district of Tyre and went by way of Sidon to the Sea of Galilee, into the district of the Decapolis. And people brought to him a deaf man who had a speech impediment, and begged him to lay his hand on him. He took him off by himself, away from the crowd. He put his finger into the man's ears, and spitting, touched his tongue. Then he looked up to heaven and groaned and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. And immediately the man's ears were opened. His speech impediment was removed, and he spoke plainly. He ordered them not to tell anyone, but the more he ordered them not to, the more they proclaimed it. They were exceedingly astonished and said, He has done all things well. He makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. The Gospel of the Lord. A few weeks ago, I saw a delivery driver coming to drop off a package here at church. Instead of coming to the office, however, he was heading towards the main doors of the church. So I went outside to grab his attention. After a few attempts of saying, Sir, 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 I became increasingly frustrated, thinking he was ignoring me. So I started walking towards him, but when he turned around and saw the look on my face, he apologetically signaled that he was deaf. My heart sank. I was way too quick to judge, humbled and embarrassed. That moment made me consider how difficult it must be to be deaf, because nobody can immediately recognize your condition. You have to interact with a deaf person, hopefully in a kinder manner than I did, before you realize they cannot hear you. In today's Gospel, Jesus does more than heal a deaf man. He shows great compassion, something this man was often denied. To be deaf in the first century was like a scarlet letter. People associated it with sin. You were deaf because you were a sinner. God was punishing you. Today we know that isn't the case, but you can imagine how unfairly this man must have been treated by others his whole life. While Jesus could have easily healed him from a distance, he pulls this man aside and touches the most wounded parts of his life, literally digging his finger into this man's ear and spitting on his tongue. Touching the source of this man's pain, Jesus looks up to the heavens, groans, and cries out, Ephphatha, be opened. This is one of only 3 scenes in the Gospels where Jesus is recorded speaking in his native tongue of Aramaic. The second comes when he's standing next to parents who've just lost their daughter. Moved with grief, Jesus touches the dead girl and cries out, Talitha cum, little girl, I say to you, arise. Like the deaf man, instantly she is healed. These 2 scenes, the pain of a deaf man and the death of a little girl, struck a chord in Jesus so deeply that his words were never translated. When is the final time we hear Jesus speaking in his native tongue? While hanging from the cross. There he takes on the pain of every human being, not just the pain of a deaf man or the pain of a young girl's family. Carrying all of this weight, he cries out, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you abandoned me? When we look at what's happened in the world this week, from Afghanistan to Haiti, to the wildfires, to the destruction wrought by Hurricane Ida, So many have cried out with similar words, my God, why have you abandoned me?" Our world is in dire need of healing. Physically, homes, businesses, and entire communities must be rebuilt. Beneath the physical destruction, though, is the emotional pain of loss, something that everyone feels from time to time. Yet, like the man who was deaf, we can conceal what burdens us most. Nobody walks around with a t-shirt saying, deaf, cancer, broken inside, difficult marriage, addict, frazzled, doubting, financially unstable, insecure, or lonely. But if we allow Jesus to pull us aside and dig his finger into our wounds, often concealed, he will surely say, "Ephphatha, be opened." How we wish that our healing were as immediate as it was for the man in the gospel. But remember how his healing started. It was the community who brought him to Jesus. Without them, he would be unaware that Jesus was passing by. Without the community, this man would still be isolated and deaf. May we bring one another to Jesus in prayer and through our actions, so that everyone can experience those gracious words, "Ephphatha, be opened, be healed."